Islam be feared? Shouldn't Islam be feared by those people who are unjust, who create fitna on this planet? Shouldn't they fear Islam because Islam stands for justice and peace? So maybe Islam should be feared. How does the media portray the Muslims? Does it create Islamophobia? Today, we are delighted to have two people who have not only written tremendously about the subject, one who is a journalist, two, a blogger, who have both contributed to this conversation. We will also be talking to Fayaz Mughal, who represents an organization who has done some research, the first one on anti-Muslim violence. If I can just give you some quotes from his report, that Muslim women are the target of increasing harassment, and, hold on, majority of incidents involve white males, victims range up to 89 years of age, and women are the highest in numbers to be targeted. So today we're asking the question, number one, how is the media portraying? And if media is portraying Muslims in negative light, are we as Muslims giving the media some raw material? Assalamu alaikum, boys.
Walaikum assalam.
Welcome. Let me start with you, Majid. You recently did a report, didn't you, on Islamophobia? We know that Islamophobia to a certain extent is on the rise, but do we as Muslims create situations for the media to actually represent us in bad light? Are we actually also part of the problem?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think, yes, there could be some odd situations where Muslims may act in a way which is contrary towards Islam, and that doesn't do Islam any favors. But on the majority as a whole, we've got to understand is that we're living in an increasingly secular society, a secular Europe, which only will tolerate a certain amount of faith or Islam or whatever it's going to be. When the Pope came down to the UK, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years back, he said, he described it as the culture which exists within Europe, and specifically Britain, is one of, I think he typed it, militant atheism.
Yes, he did.
And secular fundamentalism. These are the type of words that he uses. He used. So in that capacity, when we look at things, we can then approach a subject from a more balanced point of view and realize, to tell you the truth, it's not Muslims themselves who may be doing certain wrong things, and because of that then people hate Islam, or that justifies attacks upon Muslims, or justifies hate crimes, or justifies attacks on Muslim women. That would be, I think, a bit of unbalanced way of looking at things.
Shoaib, you're a journalist and you're a local journalist. Do you believe that Islam is portrayed negatively by the media?
I don't think it takes a genius to realize that over the last 10-15 years there's been a concerted effort to make Muslims out to be bad, make Muslims out to be the enemy, make Muslims out to be some sort of danger to the UK and to the world. So the answer to your question is a huge yes. I mean,
yeah, but aren't we doing, I mean, but are we not providing, raw material to the media?
I would say not all the time. I think 90% of the time there is a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things being written, being broadcast that you would, if you were to step back from the situation and have a look at it, you would think this is ridiculous. If you were to name, if you were to accuse this of being to another religion, there's no way on earth this would happen to any other religion.
But didn't the Roman Catholics go through this? I mean, I'm sorry, didn't the Irish go through this? Didn't the Jews go through all this?
I know, but we're living in the 21st century, whereby we have mass communication, and the level of, you would suggest, or you would think the issues of ignorance have been broken down, because maybe in years gone by there was only certain ways that people could communicate, through newspapers, maybe through the radio, but in the last 20 years, it's a click of a button, you can be communicating with somebody in South America, in Australia.
I think it's an interesting point when we look at other communities, faith communities. You mentioned over the decades, look at what's happened to, let's say the Christian community or the Jewish community, even going far back as Nazi Germany. Then they used to say, look, that's because that was a dictatorship. and there was one guy, or there was a group of guys running society in the way and the manner in which they wanted. So what's the argument today under a democracy then? That under dictatorship it was no different. Under a democracy you say, right, okay, we're pushing multiculturalism, we're pushing, you know, communities to work together and integrate. On the other hand, you get David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, going to Germany and giving a speech on muscular liberalism, as in tolerance of Islam to a certain level, but every person must subscribe to British values. You must tick this. You must support British troops. You must support the cause of Britain. You must accept that Islam can only be limited to certain discussions and certain role within Europe. But Majid, so what's the difference there then?
But Majid, some people would dispute that isn't really democracy, is it? I mean, are we really living in a democracy, or there's a certain level of democracy?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we would describe as a democracy, definitely. You have, you know, a group of, you know, people running society in a particular manner. In this case, we find that Europe, specifically Britain, is a secular state, and religion plays a very little role in state life. In fact, a very, very limited role, apart from a few prayers and a few Christmas gatherings, and that's just about it really. And Queen is just a figurehead.
So is this, Shoaib, a very aggressive form of secularization that is taking place? And are Muslims then being used in the media to represent religion as, you know, a bunch of fanatics? Is it secularization?
I mean, it's quite easy to just blame the whole media in general. I mean, we have to pick out that on certain sections of the media, they realise that they have to be a bit more balanced. But there are certain sections of the media who will go out of their way to ensure that Muslims are portrayed in a negative light. And I'm sorry to say, at the moment, it doesn't look like that's going to change. I mean, we've had the Levinson inquiry just now, and it's a bit sad that there was only several hours, I would say a day, put aside for looking at the issue of Muslims and how they've been portrayed in the media. But if you were to go back over the last 10 years and on a daily basis, you could just look at 10, 15 articles a day where you'd think, how are these, you know, this is supposed to be a balanced newspaper, this is supposed to be a balanced television channel, how are they getting away with this?
Sells a newspaper, doesn't it?
Not necessarily. I think if you actually look at most British people, they realise this themselves. And they realise that some of the times, some of the stories are just there for the sake of being there.
Well, let me play the devil advocate. So why doesn't the Asian or Muslim media take this on? I mean, why do we shy away from some very difficult conversations?
The problem is here, it's quite easy to sit on, Islamic Channel, Asian newspaper, and you can say this over and over again, but you are generally preaching the converted.
So where
people already realise this. It's in the other forms of media that people need to be a bit more active.
So how will we get there? Majid, how are we going to get there? You're a blogger. Do we need more professional people like you to be doing? I mean, maybe we need the educational system to be restructured within the Muslim community. Is that what we need?
Definitely, I think we need a stronger representation of Islam. I'd agree with Shoaib there, definitely 100%. It needs to be done more and more, and I think more people are realizing day by day. We have, you know, the younger generation of every single of age group, you know, in the last decade, growing up, going to university, and realizing the climate that we live in. You know, when somebody says Islam is responsible for this, you know, what's wrong with a woman wearing a headscarf, as an example? So a Muslim woman will ask this question, hang on a minute, on the one hand we are promoted freedoms and said, you know, everything is fine, and then the same symbol, religious symbol, becomes an obstacle to employment. So we're talking about Islamophobia, but Islamophobia when it comes to interviews and jobs is rampant. It's a sorry state of affairs, unfortunately, especially for Muslims since 7/7 in this country. So people are waking up to some of these things. They need to now work out what to do from here, and this is where I think we need organised da'wah really amongst Muslim groups to first of all challenge what is being said against the Muslim community, and number two, put forward a plan, put forward a manifesto forward of what Muslims in Britain we should be doing. We don't want to be in a scenario where when the hijab ban happened some time back in France, where a girl wearing a headscarf could not go to a school, college, or any government building, even where there was potentially a job for her. Any government department can't work there, can't be educated there. And there was not much backlash really. So we don't want to be in that scenario.
Maybe we're not as proactive. Let's take this caller. Assalamu alaikum. I think it's Hasnain from Manchester. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. I think the line has dropped. Sorry, Majid. That tells me that yes, we have fear of Islam. That tells me that Muslims need to do more. But what is stopping us contributing? Is it that we are not educated enough? Is it that we don't understand the system? Is it that we want to open a corner shop or drive a, with no disrespect to people who are going to that business? Should we be striving more? And if we want our children to be educated, we know that we have problems because we don't send, we don't have education as a top priority. Let's take that caller again. Sorry, Majid. Is that, hello, Assalamu alaikum? Goodness me, we're dropping lines again. So,
yeah, I mean, Islam creates a personality which is a thinking person. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he engaged with people in Mecca, and people who he invited towards the deen, some of them were educated, some of them were not that educated, some of them were even illiterate. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave them very clear ideas of how to engage with society, of how to present a message, and would regularly house Sahaba ridwanullahi ajma'in and culture them with the Islamic faith and culture them with how to tackle the issues of society. So in those days, in the times of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the challenge about burying daughters alive, a norm at that time. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was training the Sahaba in terms of challenging this when the Quran ayats were coming on these topics. When the Sahaba would engage with these topics, there'd be backlash. But for a lot of people, they won hearts and minds thinking, this is fine, we may not believe in this message straight away, but at least there's sense in the discussion. So I think this is what we need to engage in a lot of discussions in British society. We're not really saying to everybody become a Muslim, but put forward those discussions in terms of what's happening in British society. So let's tackle the English Defence League narrative, which blames Islam for every single issue. Let's tackle, the David Cameron and the Tory party, the Lib Dem party and the Labour party, all three of them and all the other ones in the background as well, who continuously take pot shots at Islam and blame terrorism and put Islam into the same sentence for all the world's problems. So let's tackle some of these discussions.
That sounds wonderful. It sounds absolutely fantastic. Who's going to do it? We cannot even decide to celebrate Eid on the same day. And we're talking about a community that you're asking to let's tackle EDL or the BNP. Where do we start? I mean, shouldn't there be an intra-dialogue? Shouldn't there be a conversation within our own community?
Yeah, definitely.
But that's not happening.
Yeah.
But that isn't happening.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain groups who are trying their level best to engage with organizations, masajid, work on a local community level. So as Shoaib said, it's an easy platform here. I can say, not whatever I want, but we can challenge certain things. More or less, on your show we can. But in our communities, we need to continue with this work. So, on a masjid level, how do they tackle Islamophobia? If a young girl at college is facing discrimination, where does she go to? How does she tackle this? Where's the organized activity at colleges and universities? Alhamdulillah, this is taking shape. Over the last 20 years, there's been significant change. There used to be a time when we used to blame mosques for everything, and there's now an opportunity. So when I went to university, even at college actually, we used to do activities like these. I'm going back in the 1995 era here. And at university, full ahead, straight after 9/11, we were tackling discussions about terrorism. Is it Islam? Is it British and US foreign policy? Who's had a more violent history? Is it Islamic history? Or is it the Western history in the last 200 years? Who's caused more world chaos? So, how can Islam and terrorism be said in the same sentence there? Openly we were having these discussions, and we were inviting people, non-Muslims, to come down. We had open exhibitions. We did one with other groups and certain local figures in Rochdale with masjid figures in 2005, an Islamic exhibition day, primarily for the non-Muslim community. Come in and learn about Islam, what is a hijab, what is a masjid. My stall was all about Islamic history, about how the Sharia and Islam gave progress to the world. Had it not been for Islam and the Muslims who lived under and Islamic system, we would not be able to use the technologies that we use today on computers. Because we discovered algebra and developed this and developed the knowledge upon which operating systems which Apple and Microsoft they use to design their products.
When you talk about Apple, you just reminded me about an article, and I hope that this sister can come through to us. I just want to read something to you, and you talk about Apple, and I'm not too sure we're supposed to. Sorry, I think we have a caller. Assalamu alaikum. Stopped again. I think we're having some technical problems. I do apologize. But when you have, and this is an article written by a journalist, she's a journalist in Manchester, and she talks about how certain educational institutions are defining words. And she talks about Islamophobia, and she said the word relegation on this particular dictionary describe Islamic tradition and tribal custom relegating women to live at home. So Islamophobia is not just about you know, a woman walking down with a headscarf and she's called names. But here it seems like an institutionalized form of racism, institutionalized form of Islamophobia. How do we deal with that, Shoaib? You as a journalist, how do you deal with that?
I think the biggest problem we have is we as Muslims don't have enough people in areas where we can make an influence in the media. I'm sorry to say that. I mean, we have we have a lot of Asian newspapers, TV channels, and so forth. But in the mainstream media, there is a need for more Muslims to be in positions where they can make an influence.
Are we so occupied with Bollywood and Lollywood that we are forgetting the reality of what's going on?
Yeah, we try to sell the same thing to people because that's what people were reading in the 80s and 90s, and we think, well, they're still
Let's take this call.
Thing.
Sorry, Shoaib. Sister Khatija from Lancaster. Assalamu alaikum, sister. Sister, can you speak up, please?
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, sister.
I'm calling from Northamptonshire.
Yes, Sister Khatija.
My name is Khatija Bade Wood.
Yes.
I'm a founder member of an organization that empowers, inspires, motivates Muslim women through advocacy and nurturing. I just want to go back to the point that you mentioned to one of the speakers about that we don't even decide on what day to celebrate Eid. We don't have unity regarding having issues like that. So how can we arrange, tackling the media and Islamophobia? Now, I totally agree that we need to get ourselves sorted out first. And the other thing also is, we also, there are communities that do lack knowledge of Islam. So they don't have the confidence to speak about these matters. And, Islam is not just about wearing a scarf, etc. So I think what we need to do is to engage in our young people, to make them fully aware about what Islam is all about, and to raise their confidence and to become more assertive.
You're very kind, sister. You're absolutely right. Yes, and this is exactly what we need to do, is to engage with young people. Jazakallah khair for your call. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. They're absolutely right. We have to engage with young people. But, we keep going back about engaging with young people, but we don't engage with them. We bank information into them, whether it's at school or whether it's at a mosque. This is information, eat, eat, eat. There isn't an engagement. There isn't. Is there? You're young. You engage with your young people in the communities?
I want to say I'm as young as Majid here, but...
as far as I'm concerned, you're both young. We will not argue on that issue.
Yeah, we engage with the young people, but I think we're missing the point here. The point seems to be that in terms of the wider media, there needs to be a concerted effort from Muslims to engage with the wider media, regardless of them being friendly towards our cause or not.
Let me just say, Mehdi Hassan, who writes...
for the New Statesman.
Sorry, what does he write for?
For the New Statesman.
For the New Statesman. And he wrote an article which was, he's talking about, as a journalist, and he's a qualified journalist. He appears on various TV channels on various issues, and he wrote this article where he talks about how he has been treated. And somebody, Jonathan Freeland, who wrote in The Guardian, said, I stand with Mehdi Hassan against the torrent of Islamophobic abuse. Here you have somebody who writes and doesn't always agree with Mehdi Hassan, but here you have admitting, and this takes courage. So there are people who are engaging with the wider or the generic media, but maybe not enough. Maybe not enough. Maybe we don't have that caliber. And maybe that's what is needed, desperately.
Yeah, definitely I agree. I think it's also a lesson for us in the sense that no matter what position you're in, whether you are Mehdi Hassan, who was the editor, I think, of The New Statesman, or whether you're Saida Warsi, in both positions, no matter what you do, you can bend over backwards and please whoever you want. At the end of the day, Islam and Muslims, your identity will always come first, and your political affiliations and your political ideas will come second there.
I'm going to stop there because this brother has been on the phone a couple of times. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Hasnain.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you indeed. I do apologize, but I think the line dropped when you called earlier.
I'm really sorry, but the telephone line's been absolutely awful.
I do apologize. So what do you have to say, Brother Hasnain?
Are you going to keep breaking up? But will I have the opportunity just to make two comments, please?
Indeed. Go ahead.
Right, okay. Just if you look at the
Are you ringing from a mobile? Are you ringing from a mobile, brother?
Yeah, shall I ring from the landline?
I think that might be better.
Right, okay.
Jazakallah khair.
I'll try from the landline.
Please
okay.
do. Allah Hafiz. Sorry, Majid, you were saying.
Yeah, so no matter what position you're in, your identity is what's questioned. And you seem to be somebody who's what they described Mehdi Hassan as pandering to the extremists. Yes. But the problem is Mehdi Hassan was the same person who was saying this person's an extremist, that person's an extremist, and buying into the narrative from the state, buying into the narrative peddled by the same mainstream parties. Today he's become a victim of that himself. So no matter if you peddle whatever Cameron says about muscular liberalism, say, yeah, I agree with him, at the end of the day, when it comes to Islam and Muslims, you're the first one under the firing line. Yes. And obviously his kind of article presented those facts quite clearly about he's been under so much abuse, especially when it comes to the comments on his articles that he makes there.
You did. It's quite frightening actually to think that a person who's qualified, because he's a very qualified young man, can face that. But you've said something very important. It doesn't matter how much you agree with the philosophy. Are we then saying that this is a clash of civilization, as maybe Huntington actually thought of, who we said we disagreed with Huntington's philosophy of clashes of civilization? Are we then saying here we do have a clash of civilization? It doesn't matter what you do, there will always be a clash.
Yeah, I mean, the clash of civilization was more from like a world perspective, from one state to the other, and how that state or Islamic government would operate in the world community. And there would be a clash of civilizations in terms of one front which is from the West, one front which is the Islamic world, and where would the two meet?
Sure.
I think from here, it's more a case of what does the government want from the Muslim community? It wants, they say integration, but it seems like assimilation. So you must subscribe to set ideals. You must do this. So for example, if you question British troops' involvement in the Muslim world, you say that's not right. You're classed as an extremist, as a Muslim extremist. And you would be, I wouldn't say under the radar in that sense, but you would be looked into, right, this person's views are not...
I think we're all under the radar.
we're under Allah Ta'ala's radar, that's all that matters for us.
Alhamdulillah, let's take this call. Brother Hasnain, Assalamu alaikum. Oh, he dropped the call again. Brother Hasnain, you're really having difficulty, but please do get through. You have something important to say to all. What we're going to do, Shoaib, what's the solution? Other than saying to mothers and fathers, train your children to become good journalists.
I think that's one way of getting people to be a bit more proactive. But I think the issue is that I think we need to be looking at specific issues when they appear in the mainstream media to be a bit more active about it. I mean, I'll give you an example. Our own example is we obviously run a newspaper. I mean, we get, if there's a small error of judgment on one of the writers' part, we will get a lot of emails and phone calls. and it'll be an insignificant issue. Now, if those same people put their energies towards when an article appears in the Times or the Telegraph or the Sun, they will get an answer. The beauty of living in this country is that if you complain hard enough, you will get your way. And that is the beauty of living here. They give you so many opportunities to complain. There is opportunity to complain in this country, and you can take advantage of it. The sad fact is we are more likely to complain about minor issues rather than when some major mistake has been made in a mainstream newspaper. We will tend to think, no, it won't make any difference.
I want you to hold on thought, because I think that's a very important point that you've just made. We become petty at many times. I've seen that. We're going to take a very short break. Don't go away. Do call in. And the brother from Manchester who's trying, please do call through. I do apologize. We seem to be having some problems, obviously, either your end or our end. The number is on the screen. We'll see you in a short while. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Community Platform. The topic under discussion, of course, is very much Islamophobia, media, and the Muslims. How and why Islamophobia is created, who creates, and do certain situations in the world create Islamophobia, but also gives Muslims a situation where they are angry. Today is 11th of July. How many of us have remembered that over 10,000 people, brothers and young people, men, were murdered in Bosnia, Srebrenica? We very rarely remember our own history, short history. And maybe what Shoaib said was an extremely important point, that maybe we become too petty. Shoaib, have we become really petty that we'll pick up the phone and we'll call you that we don't think that you should have written that, but here you have main media which is absolutely taking the Muslim right to the task, and we don't respond. Why is it that we don't respond? Is it because we don't know how to respond, or is it that we feel that we can never challenge the main media?
I think over the last 10 years, I think we've gone into like a siege mentality where people actually think that nothing will change and this is the way it is. But it's up to people themselves to pick up the phone, send the emails, go on Twitter, Facebook, whatever they may be, and change that perception about Muslims themselves. I mean, we do tend to pick up on points that tend not to be as, in the scale of things, if you look at what's going on in the world, as important as we might feel.
Maybe they don't know. Well, I mean, this afternoon I was with some students, we were having a discussion of what's happening in Burma and the Muslims that are being hurt. No, not a single person knew in that. These were students, but not a single person knew about it. Maybe we don't read the newspapers. Maybe we don't watch the mainstream news. Maybe we watch Bollywood all the time.
That's not necessarily the case. I think we kind of have a...
I get the feeling you're a fan of Bollywood.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Bollywood. I'm more a fan of Hollywood. But
okay.
I would say that it's quite easy for us to dismiss people, to say, oh, they're only interested in these things and those things. People have so much information at their fingertips.
Really?
Through the amount of... things. I mean, just imagine 20 years ago, if you told somebody that he had so much information just in a little phone, in the palm of his hand, he'd have probably thought you're mad.
Let's take this call. Sister Arwa, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Welcome, Sister Arwa. Sister Arwa, you are a journalist, and I was reading the article that you wrote, Apple and its Islamophobic thesaurus. Just explain something, just explain to our listeners, what did you mean by that?
Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying. The line's very unclear.
I'm sorry, can you hear me, sister? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me, sister?
Yeah, a little better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We were reading, well, I was reading your article this afternoon, Apple and its Islamophobic thesaurus, and it was quite interesting because here you have Islamophobia, you know, in the public domain, but here you're talking about Islamophobia at a very different level. Just explain to us what you meant by this article.
Well, I wrote the article because I think people are very focused on the kind of dramatic examples of Islamophobia, but there are lots of examples of Islamophobia that are a bit more subtle and are hidden in things like books, novels, articles, and even dictionaries, as I said. So I wanted to kind of raise people's attention to this, be on the lookout, and to be aware of all forms and types of Islamophobia, and to kind of challenge them wherever they see them.
So basically what you're saying is that there's a certain kind of Islamophobia which is in hidden text. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, I didn't catch your question. I'm sorry, the line is very unclear.
I'm sorry, we seem to be having some technical problem. You're on a mobile, aren't you? That's maybe why there's a problem. Hello, are you still with us?
Sorry, I really can't hear you.
Don't worry, sister. We'll get you back some other time. Jazakallah khair for your call.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Not at all, not at all. Allah Hafiz. This is the sister that's a journalist in Manchester, and she talks about that there are hidden Islamophobia text that people don't realize, you know, the meanings that they are conveying, and more of subliminal, you know, subliminal images, but there are subliminal meanings within words, and that's extremely dangerous. That we can't challenge them because you know, it's not open.
Yeah, I think sometimes we fail to realize some of these ways in which Islamophobia has been kind of like embedded within, whether it could be school education. So for example, this extremism toolkit which came out 2 years ago,
yes,
to tackle, under the guise of Prevent, the government program to tackle extremism and radicalization, blaming the Muslim community for every single possible issue. So you got examples inside this. It says if you found your friend and you went to his garage and he had lots of fertilizer inside there, what would you do? What would you do? Would you tell the police? Would you go and tell some sort of local person? Would you speak to the imam? By default, what they're doing is implying is that you're the ones who's responsible for all of these things, and it's some sort of like culturally embedded within you to do these things as well.
Let's take this call. Assalamu alaikum, brother Muhammad Iqbal from London.
Wa alaikum salam.
Welcome, brother. What do you have to say?
Well, Sam, I can't really hear you properly at all. I've just got a comment to make.
Certainly.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly, brother. Carry on.
Okay, I'll make my comment, inshallah. Basically, in terms of what you're discussing about Islamophobia and the media, I think we need to put this into a bit of a perspective such that as Muslims, if you look through our history, that the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, the early Muslim community, they always had people, you know,